When was the last time you made a genuine decision that was entirely your own? Not because someone told you to, not because it was expected of you, not because you were afraid of what might happen if you didn't, but simply because you decided, because it was your choice, because something inside urged you toward a direction, and you followed it without checking for external approval, without waiting for a safety net. If you are sitting with that question right now and aren't sure of the answer, then this video is for you. Today, we are looking into the mirror through Shinji Ikari from the series Evangelion. Before you say, "I'm nothing like an anime character," stay with me. Because the question Shinji cannot answer is the exact same question many of us are silently evading. Behind all the giant robots and monsters, Shinji's story is about something much more intimate. It's about what happens to a human being when they never learn how to want something for themselves. When every action in their life is a reaction. When their entire identity is built around surviving the expectations of others instead of discovering their own. Let's talk quickly about Shinji. He lost his mother at a very young age, a horrific accident tied to his father's work, and then, instead of comfort, his father discarded him. He wasn't sent to a loving home, but to a stranger, growing up in a place where he knew he was not the chosen one. For years, that child lived in the silence of abandonment. Children don't have the capacity to understand the complex tragedies of adults. They don't think, "My father is too grief-stricken to parent." They simply default to a brutal truth. "I must not be valuable enough for him to stay." That toxic belief took root in Shinji's mind before he even knew how to define pain. It became the source code running in the background of everything he did later. At 14, he receives a message from the man who abandoned him, "Come here now," and Shinji goes. He doesn't go out of curiosity, and certainly not out of trust. He goes because deep down, he is still kneeling, begging for a crumb of validation from his father. He still hopes in the most desperate way that if he is useful enough this time, if he agrees to be a tool, his father will finally truly see him, not as a weapon, but as a son. That hope is the fuel that keeps Shinji going, but at the same time, it is the chain that locks him in the prison of other people's expectations. Before we go any further, I want to address something directly. If you've heard of Shinji before, you've probably heard him called weak, annoying, a coward. There are corners of the internet dedicated to mocking him. Why won't he just get in the robot? From the outside, his hesitation looks like a failure, but that perspective is entirely flawed. Shinji isn't weak. He is someone thrown into circumstances completely beyond his control, and he developed the only survival tactics available to him. He learned very early that the world is not safe, that being close to people means being vulnerable to pain, that trying and failing is more dangerous than not trying at all. The safest thing, the best tactic to protect what little stability he has left is to wait. Wait for someone to decide. Wait for someone to lead. Wait for someone to tell him that doing this is okay. That isn't weakness. That is adaptation. It's what a human does when their environment teaches them that their own choices are burdens. In psychology, there is a concept called learned helplessness. It comes from a heartbreaking experiment where dogs were subjected to shocks they couldn't escape. After a while, even when the exit was opened, they didn't try to run, they just lay there and endured. Not because they lacked the ability to escape, but because they were programmed to believe that effort changes nothing. This model is operating inside many people. When a child grows up in an environment where love is withdrawn regardless of what they do, they learn one thing. It's best to stop trying to steer your life and start learning how to endure it. This is exactly who Shinji is. He doesn't get into the robot because he's brave. He gets in because he has no reason to say no, because following orders is the only operating manual he has to avoid being abandoned again. Look at your own life. The job you're doing, did you choose it out of passion or because someone said it was stable and you didn't have enough of a reason to refuse? The relationship you're stuck in, is it because you're happy or because leaving requires a monumental decision while staying is simply familiar? Most of us are navigating our lives rather than living them. We are just reacting to the world instead of proactively walking through it. And that gap between navigating and truly living, that is the void Shinji never managed to cross. There's a small detail in Evangelion that carries massive weight. Shinji wears headphones everywhere, the same old track, looping over and over. It's not just a habit, it's armor. Inside the headphones, everything is stable and predictable. He controls the music, the only thing he has the power to control in his life. In real life, your smartphone is your modern armor. You scroll whenever you feel empty, not because there's anything good to see, but to prevent the silence from speaking. You use it to drown out the stillness until you no longer know how to exist without it. We choose performative busyness to avoid sitting with the question, is this truly the life I wanted? And then we get caught in the hedgehog's dilemma. Imagine hedgehogs in a winter night. They need warmth, so they move closer. But the closer they get, the more their quills hurt each other. So they retreat, get cold again, and move back in. They are forever stuck finding a distance, close enough to not freeze, but far enough to avoid emotional injury. This is exactly who Shinji is. He doesn't get into the robot because he's brave. He gets in because he has no reason to say no, because following orders is the only operating manual he has to avoid being abandoned again. Halfway through the story, Shinji collapses. He did everything he was told, and his father still won't look at him. So, Shinji quits. He packs his small bag and walks away. Most viewers get frustrated. Everyone is going to die. How can he be so selfish? But look deeper. Quitting is Shinji's first autonomous decision. He didn't follow anyone's orders. No one approved of it. It was incredibly risky, but it was the first time Shinji acted because he felt he had reached his limit. The tragedy is that since he was never taught how to say, I want, the only way he could exercise agency was to say, I'm done. By the end of the film, when Shinji sits in the void and faces himself, he realizes his value doesn't lie in how useful he is. The moment he decides to return, not because he has to, but because he accepts that the pain of living is still better than the emptiness of running that is the real victory. The creator, Hideaki Anno, wrote Shinji from his own clinical depression. Shinji is a mirror, and the reason we feel uncomfortable with him is that the mirror is reflecting the exact things we are trying to evade. Let's bring this back to reality. No giant robots, no apocalypse. Just you and your choices. Have you ever wondered if you are living your life or just performing a script written by society and your family? When you always say, I don't know, whatever you want, to avoid having an opinion, you aren't being easygoing. You are witnessing the disappearance of the self. You are navigating your life as a passenger instead of the driver. Shinji's story doesn't solve the problem neatly. By the end, he still hasn't figured out who he is. But he did one thing. He accepted his own existence. He decided that the pain of being was worth more than the safety of hiding. You don't need anyone's permission to start living your own life. Don't wait for everything to collapse before you start choosing. Turn off the old track in your headphones, put the phone down, and start facing the silence.